The message came through the Deep Space Communication Array at exactly 14:23 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Hayek was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency signal started flashing red on his command console. He set down his cup and walked over to the communication station. "What do we have, Lieutenant Minho?" Hayek asked his communications officer. "Sir, it's a distress call. Very weak signal coming from the Outer Rim territories. The transmission is breaking up, but I think it's from the Volani Republic." Hayek frowned. The Volani were peaceful fish-like, people who lived underwater on 3 small planets far from the main trade routes. They were smart and kind, but they had no military to speak of. Most people in the galaxy barely knew they existed. "Put it through the speakers," Hayek ordered. The voice that came through was clearly desperate. It belonged to Ambassador Yuna, the Volani's main diplomat. Her words were broken by static, but the fear in her voice was clear. "Anyone who receives this message, our worlds are under attack. The Korthak Empire has invaded our space. They are destroying our cities. Millions of our people are dying. Our protective domes are being broken. Our children are drowning. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." The message repeated several times, then cut to silence. The bridge of the human ship Soul's Pride was quiet for a long moment. "Sir," Minho asked quietly, "should I forward this to Fleet Command?" "Yes," Hayek said. "Priority 1 transmission. Make sure Admiral Day gets this immediately." Hayek had heard of the Korthak Empire. They were a brutal group of alien warriors who conquered weaker species for sport. They used living ships grown from some kind of alien creature, and they showed no mercy to anyone who got in their way. The Korthak had been moving through the Outer Rim for months, taking over planet after planet. 2 hours later, Admiral Day's response came back. It was short and simple. "Maintain current position. Monitor all communications from Volani space. Report any new developments immediately." Hugh expected that would be the end of it. The Volani were too far away from human space to matter much to Earth's government. The galaxy was full of small wars and conflicts. Usually, the major powers stayed out of other people's business unless their own interests were threatened. He was wrong. Over the next 3 days, more messages came from Volani space. Each one was worse than the last. Ambassador Yuna described how the Korthak ships looked like giant sea creatures with weapons growing from their bodies. She told them about whole cities being crushed under the ocean when their protective domes failed. She talked about families being separated as they fled from one underwater city to another. The worst message came on the 3rd day. Yuna's voice was barely a whisper. "This is Ambassador Yuna of the Volani Republic. If anyone receives this message, please know that we tried to resist. The Korthak have taken 2 of our 3 worlds. Our military was destroyed in the first attack. We estimate that 12 million of our people have died. Our last world will fall within days. We just wanted someone to know that we existed, that we tried to live in peace. Please remember us." Captain Hayek stared at the communication console for a long time after the message ended. His crew was silent. Everyone on the bridge had heard the desperation in Yuna's voice. "Sir," Minho said, quietly, "there's another transmission coming in. This one's from Fleet Command." "Put it through." Admiral Day's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, but his eyes were hard as steel. Behind him, Hayek could see other officers moving around what looked like a war room. "Captain Hayek, I need you to listen carefully. You are to proceed immediately to the edge of Volani space. Do not engage any hostile forces. Your job is to observe and report. You will have company. Company, sir? The Third Fleet is mobilizing. Every ship we can spare is being redirected to your position. We will arrive in 6 days. Hayuk felt his mouth drop open. The Third Fleet was huge. It contained over 300 ships, including some of humanity's most powerful warships. Sir, with respect, the Villani asked for aid. They're probably expecting medical supplies and maybe some defensive weapons. The Third Fleet seems like... Captain, Admiral Day interrupted. When someone asks for help, we help. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The Third Fleet is just the beginning. The transmission ended, leaving Hayuk staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew was equally shocked. Sir, his navigator spoke up, the Third Fleet, that's not aid. That's an invasion force. No, Hayuk said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn on him. That's a rescue mission. Set course for Villani space, maximum speed. As the Soul's Pride jumped to hyperspace, word of humanity's response began to spread through underground channels across the galaxy. Most species assumed the humans would send a few ships with supplies and maybe some volunteers. That was how these things usually worked. The strong helped the weak just enough to feel good about themselves, but not enough to risk real trouble. They had no idea what was coming. In the Korthak fleet, Commander Bach received the intelligence report about human ships heading toward Villani space. He laughed as he read it. Humans were known as traders and explorers. They were soft people who avoided fights whenever possible. A few human ships would not change anything. Bach had no way of knowing that humanity had just made a decision that would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The Villani had asked for help, and humanity was about to show everyone what that really meant. The message from Ambassador Yuna continued to broadcast across space, growing weaker each time. But now it would not go unanswered. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing everything they had. The mobilization began within hours of Admiral Day's decision. Across human space, ships that had been on routine patrols, training missions, and diplomatic duties received the same urgent message. Report to staging area Omega-7 immediately. Fleet. Admiral Nari stood in the command center of the massive space station orbiting Mars, watching the tactical display as hundreds of green dots converged on the rally point. Each dot represented a human warship, and more were arriving every hour. Ma'am, her aide reported, the Third Fleet is now at full strength. Admiral Day is requesting permission to depart. Denied, Nari said calmly. Tell Admiral Day to hold. Position. Ma'am, we're not done yet. Signal the First and Second Fleets. I want every ship that can fly and fight. The aide looked shocked. Ma'am, that's the entire human navy. Are we going to war? No, Nari replied, her eyes never leaving the display. We're going to save someone. The word spread quickly through the fleet. Captain Jin stood on the bridge of his assault carrier Busan Thunder, watching as more and more ships appeared in the staging area. He had served in the human navy for 15 years, and he had never seen anything like this. Captain, his first officer said, we've got dreadnoughts, battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, support ships, medical vessels. This is the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. Jin nodded. And we're using it to help people we've never met, on worlds most humans couldn't find on a map. Dr. Su was briefing the fleet commanders via hologram from her research station. As one of the few humans who had actually studied Villani culture, her expertise was suddenly very valuable. The Villani are aquatic, she explained to the assembled captains and admirals. They breathe water, not air. Their cities are built in giant domes on the ocean floor. When the Korthak attack these domes, the Vallani don't just lose their homes, they lose their ability to survive. She pulled up images of Vallani civilians. They looked somewhat like Earth's dolphins, but with longer, more flexible arms and large, intelligent eyes. They are peaceful people, Dr. Suk continued. Their entire culture is based on learning and cooperation. They have no weapons of war because they never thought they would need them. They trusted that the galaxy would leave them alone. Well, they were wrong about that, Admiral Day said grimly. What do we need to know to help them? Their technology is different from ours, Dr. Sue explained. They use living coral to build their cities, and they grow their tools instead of manufacturing them. When we arrive, we'll need to be very careful not to damage their ecosystems while we're fighting the Korthak. Meanwhile, in Korthak space, intelligence reports were flowing in about the human response. Commander Bach read them with growing confusion. 50 ships, he said to his aide. No, wait. 100 ships? This doesn't make sense. Sir, the latest report says there are over 300 human vessels gathering at their staging point. Bach laughed. That's impossible. No one sends 300 warships to help strangers. The intelligence must be wrong. Humans are traders, not warriors. They might send a medical ship or two, maybe some food supplies. Sir, what if the reports are accurate? Then the humans are even stupider than I thought, Bach replied. 300 ships would be enough to challenge our entire fleet, but they would never risk that for the fish people. No one would. Back in human space, the fleet was almost ready. The final count was staggering. 847 ships of all sizes and types. It was the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and it was being sent to save a species that most humans had never heard of. Captain Hayek was still at the edge of Vallani space, monitoring the situation. The news from the 3 Vallani worlds was getting worse. The first world had gone completely silent. The second world was sending desperate messages asking for evacuation ships. The third world, where Ambassador Yuna was located, was preparing for a final siege. Sir, Lieutenant Minho reported, I'm picking up Korthak communications. They're coordinating an attack on the last Vallani world. It sounds like they plan to finish this in the next few days. Hyuk clenched his fists. Every hour they waited, more Vallani died. But his orders were clear. Observe and report. Do not engage. Sir, Minho continued, there's something else. The Korthak are talking about what they'll do after they finish with the Vallani. They're planning to move on to the Zentari colonies next, then the Helix Nebula settlements. They're not going to stop, Hayuk realized. This isn't just about the Vallani. The Korthak are planning to conquer this entire sector. At the staging area, Fleet Admiral Nari was having a similar conversation with her staff. The intelligence is clear, she said. The Korthak Empire has been expanding for 2 years. They've conquered 14 different species so far. If we don't stop them here, they'll keep going until they run into someone strong enough to fight back. Ma'am, one of her advisors said, the cost of this operation will be enormous. We're talking about moving the entire fleet across half the galaxy. The fuel costs alone. The cost of not acting will be higher, Nari interrupted. How many more species will die while we count credits? Admiral Day's voice came through the communication system. Fleet Admiral, the third fleet is ready to depart. What are your orders? Nari looked at the tactical display one last time. Nearly 1,000 human ships ready to fight and die for people they had never met. It was insane. It was excessive. It was perfectly human. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Nari. You all know why we're here. The Volani Republic asked for help. They didn't ask for much, just enough aid to survive. But that's not how we do things. She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. When someone asks for help, we don't ask if it's convenient. We don't ask if it's profitable. We don't ask if it's safe. We ask one question. How much help do you need? And then we bring more than that. The communication channel was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, ships began to acknowledge the order. Hundreds of voices saying the same thing. Understood. Ma'am, ready to jump. All ships, Nari ordered, jump to hyperspace. Destination, Volani space. Let's go save some people. One by one, the human ships disappeared into hyperspace. The largest fleet in human history was on its way to answer a simple call for help. In Korthak space, the final intelligence report arrived just as the human fleet jumped. Commander Bach stared at the numbers in disbelief. 847 ships. It wasn't an aid mission. It was an armada. For the first time since the invasion began, Bach felt afraid. The first human ship to arrive was Captain Hayuk's Soul's Pride. Lieutenant Minho was monitoring all frequencies when the long-range sensors started going crazy. Sir, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Something big is coming. Hayuk felt his heart race. Korthak reinforcements? No, sir, the signatures are... Wait. Minho's voice changed, filled with wonder. Sir, it's the Third Fleet. They're arriving early. Through the front viewing port, Hayuk watched as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Human destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carriers materialized in perfect formation. It was the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. But they were just the beginning. Over the next 10 minutes, the space around Volani's last world filled with human warships. The massive fleet had arrived in groups, each one larger than most species' entire navies. The tactical display showed hundreds of green dots, all bearing the blue and white colors of the human fleet. Sir, Minho whispered, I count 847 ships. In the Korthak fleet, alarms were blaring. Commander Bach stood on the bridge of his bioship, watching his sensors try to count the human vessels. His ship was a living creature, bred for war, with weapons that grew from its body like tumors. It had never been defeated in battle. Now it was surrounded by enemies. How many ships? Bach demanded. Sir, our sensors cannot get an accurate count. The human fleet is too large. We estimate between 800 and 900 vessels. Bach felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. The Korthak task force had 17 bioships, more than enough to destroy the Volani. But against nearly 1,000 human warships, this was madness. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. Captain Hana of the battleship Daegu's Hammer was the first to respond. Her ship was massive, bristling with weapons and armor. When her image appeared on Bach's screen, her expression was cold as space. This is Captain Hana of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. You will cease all hostile actions against Volani civilians and withdraw from this system immediately. Bach tried to project confidence he didn't feel. Human, you are interfering in Korthak business. These worlds belong to the Empire now. Leave, and we will let you go unharmed. You misunderstand, Hana replied calmly. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. You have 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal. You cannot be serious, Bach snarled. Do you know who we are? We are the Korthak Empire. We have conquered 14 species. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. 50 seconds, Hana said, her voice unchanged. Bach cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. All ships prepare for battle. These humans think they can intimidate us with numbers. Show them what real warriors can do. The Korthak bioships moved forward, their living weapons beginning to glow with deadly energy. They had evolved for millions of years to be perfect killers. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The battle began when the largest Korthak bioship fired its main weapon at the human flagship. The beam of pure energy lanced through space, intended to vaporize whatever it hit. It struck the battleship Dagu's hammer and scattered harmlessly off its shields. All ships, Captain Hana announced calmly. You are cleared to engage. Show them why humans don't make idle threats. What happened next was not really a battle. It was a demonstration. The human fleet moved with precision that amazed even their enemies. Destroyer squadrons, led by Commander Wu, swept around the flanks of the Korthak formation, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. Battleships advanced in a wall of steel and energy, their massive guns speaking with one voice. The Korthak had evolved to fight individual opponents or small groups. They had never faced an enemy that fought as one organism, each ship perfectly, coordinated with hundreds of others. Captain Tay commanded a destroyer squadron that used the asteroid field like an ancient naval battle. His ships appeared and disappeared among the rocks, striking at the Korthak from unexpected angles. When the bioships tried to follow, they found themselves caught in crossfire from multiple directions. This is impossible, Bach muttered, watching, his formation fall apart. No species fights like this. No one coordinates this well. His aide was panicking. Sir, we've lost 3 ships already. The humans, they're not just shooting at us. They're hurting us. They're controlling the entire battlefield. It was true. The human fleet wasn't just attacking. They were manipulating the Korthak ships, forcing them into positions where they could not support each other. Every time a bioship tried to retreat, human ships appeared to block their path. Every time they tried to group together, human weapons forced them apart. Admiral Day coordinated the entire battle from his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. Signal Group 7 to close the trap. I want those 3 bioships cut off from the main force. This was what humans excelled at. Not just fighting, but thinking while they fought. Every captain in the fleet understood the overall plan, and every ship worked toward the same goal. Down on the last Villani world, Ambassador Yuna watched the battle through her city's sensors. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. The Korthak ships that had terrorized her people for weeks were being systematically destroyed by the human fleet. How many ships did they send? Asked her aide. Nearly 1,000, Yuna whispered. We asked for help, and they sent nearly 1,000 ships. The battle was over in 3 hours. Of the 17 Korthak bioships, 11 had been destroyed and 4 had surrendered. Only 2 managed to escape into hyperspace, badly damaged and fleeing for their lives. Not a single human ship had been lost. Commander Bach was among the prisoners, his pride as broken as his ship. As he was transferred to a human vessel, he asked the question that tormented him. Why? He said to the human marine escorting him. Why did your people send so many ships? The fish people are nothing to you. The marine, a young woman named Private, Yoon looked at him with contempt. Because they asked for help, she said simply. And when someone asks for help, humans answer. All of us As the human fleet settled into orbit around the Volani world, medical ships and engineering vessels moved in to begin relief operations. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Captain Hayek received new orders from Admiral Day. "Congratulations, Captain. The Volani are safe. Now we make sure they stay that way." Yuck looked out at the massive human fleet surrounding the peaceful world below. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced itself as a power that would fight for the innocent, no matter the cost. The Korthak Empire still controlled 11 systems, but they had learned an important lesson. There were worse things in the galaxy than being conquered. There was facing humanity when they were angry. The immediate aftermath of the battle was chaos, but it was organized chaos. The human fleet had not come just to fight. They had come prepared for everything that would happen after the fighting stopped. Medical Officer Young worked around the clock in the converted cargo bay of her hospital ship. Wounded Volani civilians filled every available space, refugees from the underwater cities that had been damaged in the Korthak attacks. She had studied Volani physiology during the journey, but seeing the actual injuries was heartbreaking. "Doctor," her assistant called out, "we have another group coming in from the second world. The dome breach was worse than we thought." Young nodded grimly. The Volani needed to stay underwater to breathe properly, but the Korthak attacks had damaged their life support systems. Many of the refugees were suffering from what humans would call decompression sickness. "Set up the emergency pools in cargo. Bay 3, she ordered. "And get Engineer Kwan down here. We need portable life support systems for the evacuation ships." Engineer Kwan was already busy on the surface of the last Volani world, working alongside Volani technicians to repair their damaged cities. The technology was completely different from anything humans used, but Kwan was discovering that engineering principles were universal. "The problem is not the dome itself," he explained to the Volani engineers through his translation device. "The Korthak weapons created hairline cracks that are spreading. If we don't reinforce the structure, the whole city could collapse." The Volani engineer, whose name roughly translated to reef builder, gestured helplessly. "Our coral grows too slowly. It would take months to properly repair this damage." "Then we'll use human materials to buy you time," Kwan replied. "Metal and ceramic supports to hold the structure while your coral grows. It won't be pretty, but it will work." Above them, Admiral Day was coordinating the largest relief operation in human history. His flagship had become the center of a massive logistical effort that stretched across 3 star systems. "Report," he said to his staff. "Medical teams are treating approximately 400,000 refugees," reported his chief medical officer. "Engineering. Teams have stabilized the critical infrastructure on all 3 worlds. Food and water supplies are being distributed to 2.3 million civilians. And the military situation? All Korthak forces have been eliminated or driven from the system. However, long-range sensors are detecting movement in adjacent systems. The Empire appears to be consolidating its remaining forces." Day nodded. He had expected this. The Korthak would not simply accept defeat and go home. They would regroup and try again, probably with a much larger force. "Signal Fleet Admiral Nari," he ordered. "Tell her we're going to need more ships." The response came back within hours, and it was not what Day had expected. "Admiral Day, this is Fleet Admiral Nari. I'm pleased to inform you that the Senate has authorized Operation Guardian Shield. You are hereby placed in command of the Permanent Human Defense Force for the Outer Rim territories. Your mission is to ensure that what happened to the Volani never happens to anyone else." Day stared at the message. The human government was not just sending aid, They were establishing a permanent military presence in this region of space. The implications were staggering. Captain Jin of the carrier Busan Thunder was equally surprised when he received his new orders. His ship was to remain in Volani space indefinitely, along with 2/3 of the human fleet. "Sir," his first officer said, "permanent deployment? We're really staying here?" "Apparently," Jin replied. "The politicians back home have decided that protecting the Volani is now a core human interest." He was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Korthak Empire. It's addressed to the human fleet commander." The message was from Warlord Keth, the supreme commander of the Korthak Empire. His image appeared on the main screen, a massive, scarred creature with too many teeth and eyes that burned with hatred. "Humans," Keth snarled, "you have made a grave mistake. The worlds you now occupy belong to the Korthak Empire. We demand that you withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Day responded personally from his flagship. "Warlord Keth, I am Admiral Day of the Human Defense Force. The worlds we protect are no longer your concern. Any attempt to attack innocent civilians will be met with the full force of the human military." "You cannot protect them forever," Keth replied. "You have one fleet. We have an entire empire. Eventually you will leave, and when you do, we will return." Day's response was calm and confident. "We're not leaving. Ever. The Volani are under human protection now, along with any other species that requests our aid. If you want to test our resolve, you're welcome to try." The transmission ended, but everyone knew this was far from over. Meanwhile, Ambassador Yuna was trying to understand what had happened to her people's situation. In the space of a few days, they had gone from facing extinction to being under the protection of the most powerful military force they had ever seen. "I don't understand," she said to Captain Hyuk, who had been assigned as the human liaison. "Your people have spent enormous resources to save us. What do you want in return?" Hyuk looked genuinely confused by the question. "Want in return? We don't want anything. You asked for help, so we helped. But the cost, the risk to your own people." "Ambassador," Hyuk said gently, "let me ask you a question. If you saw a child drowning in a lake, would you jump in to save them?" "Of course. Would you ask what the child could do for you in return before you jumped in?" "No, that would be..." "Oh." Yuna began to understand. "You see us as children who were drowning." "We see you as people who needed help," Hyuk corrected. "And when people need help, humans help. It's that simple." Dr. Su was establishing the first joint human Volani research facility on the main Volani world. The combination of human technology and Volani knowledge was already producing remarkable results. "Your understanding of underwater agriculture could revolutionize food production on water worlds," she explained to her Volani colleagues. "And our manufacturing techniques could help you expand your cities much faster." The Volani researchers were fascinated by human technology, but they were even more amazed by human determination. "Your people fought an entire battle to save strangers," one of them said. "In our culture, such dedication to others is considered the highest virtue." "In our culture, too," Dr. Su replied. "I think that's why our species get along so well." The news of humanity's intervention spread rapidly through the galaxy. Other species watched in amazement as humans established permanent bases in Volani space and declared it a protectorate. Some were inspired by humanity's willingness to risk everything for strangers. Others were terrified by the demonstration of human military power. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications. Defense Minister Yeon represented humanity at the meeting. The humans have fundamentally altered the balance of power in this sector, complained the Rigelian ambassador. They cannot simply declare themselves the protectors of weaker species. Why not? Yeon replied calmly. The Galactic Council did nothing to help the Villani. We did. If other species object to our methods, they are welcome to propose alternatives. And if the Korthak return with a larger force? Then we'll deal with that too, Yeon said. The human fleet in this region is not going anywhere. Anyone who threatens innocent civilians will face the consequences. The session ended with no resolution, but the message was clear. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage as a major power, and they had done it by choosing to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Back in Villani space, the human fleet continued its work. The immediate crisis was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Humanity had made a promise to protect the Villani, and that promise would be tested soon enough. Admiral Day stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking down at the peaceful blue world below. Somewhere in those oceans, Villani families were finally sleeping safely for the first time in months. It had cost humanity enormous resources to make this happen. Ships, fuel, supplies, time, and the lives of the crew members who would now spend years away from their families. But as Day watched the lights of the Villani cities glowing beneath the waves, he knew it had been worth every credit. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity. When they said they would help, they meant it. And when they made a promise, they kept it. 6 months after the Battle of Villani space, the galaxy was a very different place. What had started as a simple rescue mission had become something much larger, a fundamental shift in how the major powers thought about protecting innocent life. Commodore Hyuk, recently promoted from captain, stood on the bridge of his new command ship watching the latest group of refugees arrive. These weren't Villani. They were Zentari colonists fleeing from another Korthak attack 3 systems away. The human fleet had arrived just in time to evacuate them before their small colony was destroyed. Sir, Lieutenant Minho reported, the last transport is docking now. We've got about 15,000 refugees total. Medical teams are already setting up temporary shelters in Cargo Bay 7. Good work, Hyuk replied. Signal Admiral Day that Operation Sanctuary Run was successful. No casualties. This had become routine over the past few months. The Korthak Empire was still trying to expand, but now they faced human resistance every time they attacked a peaceful world. The humans couldn't save every colony, but they could save most of them. And each successful rescue sent a message to the galaxy. Attacking innocents was no longer a safe strategy. In the main conference room of the orbital station New Sol, Admiral Day was meeting with Ambassador Yuna and representatives from 12 other species. The station itself was proof of how much had changed. It was built using both human technology and Villani engineering, creating something neither species could have made alone. The latest intelligence reports show that the Korthak have pulled back from their advance toward the Helix Nebula, reported Captain Tay, now serving as Chief Intelligence Officer. They appear to be consolidating their forces around their core worlds. They're afraid, said the representative from the Arcany Republic, a small trading confederation that had recently requested human protection. For the first time in their history, the Korthak are facing an enemy that fights back effectively. Ambassador Yuna nodded. The question is what they'll do next. Our sources suggest that Warlord Keth is planning something big. Admiral Day had been expecting this. Any military, Force that relies on intimidation will eventually try to prove it's still dangerous when that intimidation fails. The Korthak will attack again, probably with everything they have. Are we ready for that? Asked the Zentari representative. We're getting stronger every day, Day replied. The joint defense agreements we've signed with 18 species mean we're not fighting alone anymore, and Earth keeps sending us reinforcements. This was true. The human government had been shocked by the positive response to their intervention in Volani space. Dozens of species had requested human protection or assistance. The defense budget had tripled, and new ships were arriving in the Outer Rim every week. Dr. Su's research facility had become a symbol of this new cooperation. Human scientists worked alongside researchers from 6 different species, sharing knowledge and developing new technologies. Her latest project was particularly exciting, a new type of ship armor that combined human metallurgy with Volani bioengineering. The living metal grows stronger when it's damaged, she explained to the engineering team. It's like having a ship that heals itself in battle. Engineer Kwan was impressed. This could revolutionize ship construction. How soon can we start production? The first prototype should be ready next month, Dr. Su replied. If the tests go well, we could start retrofitting the fleet within 6 months. The work wasn't just military. Human medical officers like Young were training doctors from dozens of species in new surgical techniques. Human teachers were establishing schools for refugee children from multiple worlds. Human farmers were sharing advanced agriculture methods with colonies that had lost their food production capabilities. It was the largest humanitarian effort in galactic history, and it was being led by a species that most people had considered minor players just months before. The response from the established galactic powers was mixed. Some, like the Rigelian Federation, were openly hostile to humanity's growing influence. Others, like the Centauri Alliance, were quietly supportive. Most were simply confused by humans who seemed more interested in protecting others than in expanding their own territory. Defense Minister Yeon addressed these concerns in a speech to the Galactic Council that became famous throughout known space. Some of you have asked what humanity wants in return for our protection of smaller species, she said to the assembled ambassadors. The question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. We don't protect the innocent because we expect rewards. We protect them because it's the right thing to do. She paused, looking around the chamber. You ask what our long-term goals are. Our goal is simple. We want to live in a galaxy where children can sleep safely at night, where peaceful people can go about their lives without fear, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. If you consider this a threat to the established order, then perhaps the established order needs to change. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy and sparked intense debate. Some species began to reconsider their own policies toward weaker neighbors. Others doubled down on the traditional approach of looking out only for themselves. The Korthak response came 2 weeks later. Warlord Keth had assembled the largest fleet in Korthak history. Over 200 bioships, including massive creatures that had been growing in secret shipyards for decades. The target was obvious, the heart of the human protection zone, Volani space itself. They're coming, Captain Jin reported from his position on the edge of the system. Long-range sensors show the entire Korthak fleet heading this way, estimated arrival in 18 hours. Admiral Day looked at his tactical display. The human fleet in the region now numbered over 1,200 ships, reinforced by vessels from allied species. It was the largest military force ever assembled by the defenders of innocent life. Signal all commands, he ordered. Operation Final Stand is now. In effect, all ships to battle stations. The message went out across the fleet and to Earth itself. Humanity was about to face its greatest test since entering the galactic stage. Fleet Admiral Nari received the alert at her headquarters on Mars. Within minutes, she was issuing orders that would strip the home fleet to reinforce the outer rim. Send everything, she told her staff. Every ship that can fly, every weapon we have, every resource we can spare. If we lose this battle, we lose everything we've worked for. Ma'am, her aide asked, what if Earth is attacked while our fleet is away? Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Nari replied. But right now, the future of galactic civilization is being decided in Vellani space. That's where we need to be. The final preparations took 12 hours. Human ships formed defensive lines around the 3 Vellani worlds, while medical ships and transports prepared to evacuate civilians if necessary. Allied vessels took positions alongside human ships, their crews determined to prove that the alliance was more than just words on paper. Ambassador Yuna watched the preparations from the command center on New Sol Station. She still found it hard to believe that so many people were willing to risk their lives for her species. Why? She asked Admiral Day. Why are you risking everything for us? Day smiled. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We've decided we're not going to do nothing. The Korthak fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Warlord. Keth's flagship was a massive creature the size of a small moon, its bioweapons glowing with deadly energy. Human fleet, came Keth's transmission. You have interfered with the natural order for the last time. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Admiral Day's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear it. Warlord Keth, this is Admiral Day of the Human Defense Force. You are in violation of galactic laws regarding the protection of civilian populations. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The consequences? Keth laughed. I have brought 200 ships to your 1-200. My bioships are evolved killers, bred for war. Your metal ships are no match for living weapons. You're probably right, Day admitted. In a fair fight, you might win. But this isn't a fair fight. What do you mean? Day smiled. You're fighting for conquest. We're fighting for everything we believe in. And when humans fight for their beliefs, we don't fight. Fair. We fight to win. The battle was about to begin, and the entire galaxy was watching. As the two fleets closed to weapons range, a new transmission reached both sides. It was from President Mira on Earth, addressing not just the combatants but every species in known space. To the Korthak Empire, you have chosen to make war against innocence itself. Humanity will not allow this. To our allies, today we stand together not for territory or resources, but for the simple principle that the strong should protect the weak. To every species watching, remember this moment. Remember that when faced with a choice between safety and justice, humanity chose justice. Remember that when asked to abandon the innocent to save ourselves, we refused. The galaxy will judge us by what we do in the next few hours. We will not be found wanting. The transmission ended, and the battle for the future of galactic civilization began.